Before we get going, I'll warn you right now that this video series is going to spoil parts of Persona 5. I'm not going to go out of my way to spoil specific moments, and I'll only bring up specific story moments in rare cases, but I will be showing footage of plot events and talking about game mechanics. This is not a review, it's a diary, kind of a book club, of my thoughts as I play through the game. You have been warned. This video goes through May 2nd. This is my first time playing Persona 5. I'm not a particular fan of JRPGs, and the last turn-based game I beat was probably a Pokemon game on the Game Boy Advance. I'm racking my brain, but I don't think I've played a console turn-based RPG since Final Fantasy X. Long story short, I don't have a lot of history here, and you should know that going into the series. I've played tons of video games in my life, but I'm a relative newbie in this genre. With that said, Persona 5 grabbed my attention almost entirely with its unmistakable sense of style. Even if you have never played the game either, you probably have a clear mental image of what this game is in your head. What's incredible is that the image you have in your head right now is basically exactly what the game actually delivers. But Persona 5 is also a game that will take me about 80 hours or more to play through just the main storyline. That's longer than I've played just about any game over the past decade, and thus, the incredible style was not enough to rope me in originally. But then the game got glowing reviews when it came out, and has maintained a level of hype in the years it's been available that I couldn't avoid anymore. I had to play this game. So here I am, 10 hours into Persona 5. What do I think so far? Well, there are three main things that have grabbed my attention, and I'm going to go through each one in detail. First is the game's style, second is the gameplay loop, and third is the story. The game's stylish look is the stuff of legend, and I'm not here to say a single bad thing about it. The game is an absolute feast for the eyes, and tons of details will reveal themselves to you over time, simply enriching the visual feast. The character design is incredibly strong, with each character being immediately distinct and easy to remember. Each character is recognizable by just their silhouette, which is useful because the game uses silhouettes relatively frequently to identify characters. I love the look of the main character, Joker, and the supporting cast is almost uniformly incredible. I'm trying my best to think of someone who is just kinda blah, but no one is coming to mind. Maybe some of the volleyball players you talk to are a tad generic, but as far as I know, they aren't around for more than a scene or two, and that's not really a dig against the game. I love the way characters move around in this game too. Everyone moves with like 10 to 20% more flair than they need to, and it makes the simple act of walking around a school a bit more engaging. Joker has such a perfect strut as he walks around with his backpack slung over one shoulder, and I just dig it. The game was developed for the PlayStation 3, I'm playing on the PS4, but it was developed for the PS3, and you can really tell from some of the animations of the characters. I just mentioned that I like how the characters move, and that's true, but only when you move them with some intentionality. The game feels a little dated, as you can zip characters around with zero momentum, and they can turn on a dime, and animations start and stop without transition at all. There's nothing objectively wrong with this, I guess, but they do make me remember that this is a slightly older game. Most of the game's story moments are rendered in-engine, and there are a lot of these, but occasionally it breaks into full-motion videos of very high-quality animated cutscenes. These look astounding, and I'd be perfectly happy to sit and watch a feature film version of this game using this style. But what takes this game into the stratosphere for me is how the style blends perfectly into the game's user interface. The menus in this game are ridiculous in how they make everything feel fun. And not only that, the design never gets in the way of usability. Having a wildly stylized UI is often a recipe for disaster, but they've nailed it so well here that it should be studied by all aspiring game designers. The way that the doctor swivels around in her chair and kicks up her feet as she transforms into a silhouette and becomes part of the menu is incredible. The gun salesman does a similar thing, as I suspect other characters will later in the game. When you're in battle, your actions shoot out of your currently selected character in 3D cards that move around with you. These are super well defined and are always in the same place, so you never get confused by their positioning. All of these animations, all of these flourishes, animate incredibly quickly, so you actually never feel like they're slowing you down. It's a user experience that's both stylish and efficient. That's a damn hard combination to nail down, and they totally did it here. This gives me a perfect segue into my second topic, which is the gameplay loop. Persona 5 feels like one of those games where people say you've got to get through the first few hours before the game really starts. I'm not a big fan of this defensive games, and I think that all too many long games like this take longer than they should to get you doing something fun. I definitely get vibes of that from this game, and I could completely understand why someone might pick up this game and bounce off it pretty quickly. The gameplay for the first few hours is not that engaging, and it's kind of shockingly linear. For the first 5 hours or so, you really have no agency over where you go or what you do. Every scene is someone telling you what to do, and then you go do that thing. And even then, you aren't necessarily doing anything interesting. To top it all off, many times someone will say something like, "You should go home." And then instead of you controlling your character as you leave school, get to the train station, get on a train, and walk through the neighborhood to get home, the screen just fades to black and then you're instantly there. Sometimes it's a nice time saver, but it happens so often that I felt like I didn't even need to be there. The game would just play itself. Oh, and your character doesn't have any voice acting, but you do get some dialogue choices during conversations. But often you get numerous options that all say essentially the same thing, which is fine because the person you're talking to is going to say the same thing in response no matter what. Sometimes you get a single line response changed in the conversation, but that's it. You really aren't controlling the story here. But all that said, I did rather enjoy the pacing of the early game. The game is constantly moving you forward from scene to scene. It's getting you immersed in its world, and generally, each sequence does either A, move the plot forward, or B, teach you a new gameplay element. But even this relentless and often good pacing is a problem sometimes, as I would get to the point where I want to stop playing for the night, and the game would just keep shuttling me from scene to scene without the ability to save my game. As an adult, I find that games that won't let me save anywhere, I want to be kind of annoying, and Persona 5 definitely made things a little difficult for me in this regard. I hope this is something that gets easier as the game opens up. There's quite a bit of combat in the early game, and it's not super engaging to start, but things definitely start to open up as you progress. You have the choice of physical melee attacks, ranged attacks, items, strategy changes, auto fight options, guarding, and you can have your personas fight on your behalf. The game teaches you to fight over time, and it was never an overwhelming system for me to learn. This feels like something that's going to get more complicated as time goes on, but with good training and an excellent battle interface, I trust the game to build me up if that is the case. Oh, and there's this whole persona execution thing where you destroy two personas you have collected along your journey, and they'll meld into a new unique persona that's even more powerful. How do you get those personas? Well, so far, you get them by bringing enemies close to death and then talking them into joining you. You can also demand weakened enemies give you extra money or items. I don't have time to get into all of this right now, but there are probably a half dozen other game mechanics that I've forgotten to even mention here, all of which speaks to the complexity in this game. But the fact that I'm not overwhelmed by any of this when actually playing the game speaks well to how well it sets this all up for you. The part of the game I just finished finally broke me out of this linear path I've been on the entire time. Without getting too specific, the game set a goal for me and told me that I had until a specific date to get it done. At that point, I was able to choose whether I was ready to jump right in or do some prep work in town and at school before tackling this grand task. The game helpfully told me that it would be, quote, game over if I didn't achieve this, so I'm not sure what happens if I fail to do it by that date, but I didn't, and hopefully we'll never know just how serious that game over actually is. And now we're finally at the third and probably shortest topic, the story. All I really want to say here is that Persona 5 has a very good story with fun characters, and it doles out information at a good, digestible pace. It also gets pretty dark, bringing up topics such as depression, inappropriate student-teacher relationships, abusive coaches, rape, and teen suicide. One of the main plot points of this whole act is a high school student being assaulted by a teacher and jumping off the roof of the school. This isn't really light fare by any means, and it's to the credit of the game that it handles all of this very deftly. I'm listening to the English voice tracks, and the actors are putting in good work mostly across the board. I think the villains are well written and have clear motivations and reasons we can latch on to hate them. Meanwhile, the heroes are fun to root for and all seem to have a lot of things going on under the surface that will come out as we go along. Basically, this game feels like it's an onion that's going to take a long time to peel. I feel like I've learned a lot already, but I still have at least 70 hours left to go, and there's tons more to uncover, and I'm totally on board. And that's it for this first segment. This series is going to be a little inconsistent in release schedule, as I'm going to have to play at least 10 hours of the game for each segment, and that amount of time is sometimes easier to get than others. So far, I'm really enjoying the game despite its slow burn opening, and I'm excited to see what it has in store now that it seems like the restraints have been partially taken off. I hope to see you here again for part 2 of the series on Persona 5. See you here next time.